A lot of Americans have a problem with the way ICE is being deployed, and I'm not happy with what they're doing, nor do I want to shout them out for that.
Wesley Bell challenges military spending priorities in a tense confrontation with Pete Hegseth.
Mr. Secretary, unlike my colleague down the dais, I don't feel sorry for you. I visited with soldiers in war zones whose life is on the line, so a few tough questions. I think you'll be okay. And so my first question is, are you authorized to disclose intelligence that would put our troops in harm's way to our enemies?
Well, I reject the premise of the
just saying,
question.
Just as a hypothetical, are you authorized to do that?
I have not and do not.
Exactly, and I assume that. So when you told our ranking member that everything that you say is authorized, that wasn't completely accurate, correct?
What I said is that every way that I communicate is authorized.
No, you actually said everything that you said is authorized. I wrote it down. Now, with that said, and the reason I bring that up is because it's about accountability. And we're talking about this war ethos. The primary component of that is accountability. And I'm going to indulge me in a quick analogy. Republicans introduced a bill on the House floor a few days ago, a resolution standing against terror, racism, hate, anti-Semitism, which as an American, as a black man, I'm going to stand against those things 6 times a week, twice on Sunday. Now, the nefarious part was there was a line that was stuck at the end of that resolution that essentially gave a shout out to law enforcement, which I do support, but also to ICE, which right now, a lot of Americans have a problem with the way ICE is being deployed. And I'm not happy with what they're doing, nor do I want to shout them out for that. And so accountability was, I didn't duck from the question. I went and I talked to my constituents. I went on social media. I did interviews to explain exactly where I stood, that I stand against hate. I stand against racism. I stand against anti-Semitism. And I hate that that line was stuck in there. That's accountability. So when we're asking you these questions and you're ducking and you're not answering them directly, that's not a culture of a war, what was the term? A war ethos, a warrior ethos. I'm looking at members who serve, and they're taking their lead from you. That starts with you. And if we have troops who are in war zones and they're watching while they're risking their lives, and you can't just answer some tough questions, what kind of culture is that setting? So as a prosecutor, when I think about what's happening in California and around the country with ICE, it's not only dangerous and unconstitutional, but it raises serious public safety concerns because we have people with masks that are going around saying that they're ICE, and we've had reports of that, saying that they're ICE and committing crimes. And that's a big problem. But it gets me back to the point of the accountability piece. So, for example, do you believe quality military housing is important? Yes or no? And just keep your mic on for time because I don't only have a minute left.
Our budget commits to robust military housing and barracks upgrades.
Do you believe military children deserve a strong education?
Our budget funds strong education, and we hope more educational choices for military.
Love it. Is it a priority to provide real, reliable care to our veterans?
Of course.
So, Mr. Secretary, we have a problem here because your answers don't match your budget priorities. You said your mission is to restore this warrior ethos and that threats we face are serious, but so must our investments. So when we think of, for example, a $45 million parade, I can think of 45 million things we could do more effectively with $45 million than a parade, such as the things that I mentioned. Military housing, military children's education, providing reliable care for our veterans. All of these things would be higher on the priority than a parade. And so the parade, and when we talk about showing strength, we're not talking about theater. We're not talking about showmanship. We're talking about things that actually make our military more lethal and keeps us safer. And so, what I'm saying is that in my limited time left is accountability does matter, and this body cares about what our military is doing because we care about national security and we all take it very seriously.
Gentleman's time has expired.
One of the first issues raised centers on the handling of sensitive information and whether any official is authorized to disclose intelligence in ways that could endanger troops or compromise operations. The insistence on a clear yes or no framing highlights a key principle in democratic oversight. Authority in national security is never absolute, even for senior officials. It is always bounded by law, classification rules, and chain of command oversight. When a witness pushes back on hypotheticals or broad characterizations, lawmakers often interpret that as evasiveness, while officials may see it as protecting classified boundaries. That tension is a recurring feature of these hearings, especially when the subject involves military operations or intelligence. But the questioning quickly shifts from procedural authority into something larger, accountability culture. The lawmaker draws a contrast between rhetoric about a warrior ethos and the expectation that public officials themselves demonstrate accountability when questioned. The underlying argument is that leadership in the military context is not only about strength or operational readiness, but also about transparency to civilian oversight. In a democratic system, military leadership ultimately answers to elected representatives and, by extension, the public. To illustrate that point, the lawmaker introduces a broader analogy involving legislative decision-making. How policy language can carry unintended consequences. The example highlights how support for a general principle, such as opposing hate or terrorism, can become complicated when additional provisions are attached that some members of Congress disagree with. The takeaway is less about the specific policy dispute and more about the idea that elected officials are expected to clearly account for their positions, especially when those positions evolve in response to constituents or new information. That becomes a parallel to the hearing itself. Accountability is not just about intent, but about clarity, consistency, and responsiveness.